Hi, I'm Norm Stockton. Welcome to my home studio here in Orange County, California. I am here today with the Gallien-Krueger MB115 combo amp. Punch, portability, and expandability with the MBP series of powered enclosures. We'll talk about that in just a second. But great for fingerstyle stuff, obviously, with the 115 configuration, but it also has a horn, so it's very versatile if you want to do any sort of, anything with some crispness on top. 200 watts, designed and built in the USA. Pretty happening. So in the normal fashion, I'm going to go ahead and go through just sort of an overview of the top panel and the rear panel, and then we'll go control by control, and you could really hear what the different controls do. And as always, I encourage you to plug in your speakers or your headphones so that you can really hear what's happening with the low end. Okay, so starting on the left side of the top panel, you have your input jack, and then you have your input attenuator, 10 dB pad kind of thing. You have your gain, and then a contour switch, which is a bit of tone shaping, 4-band EQ, your boost knob, which is GK's signature growl. We'll talk about that in just a bit as well. Your master volume. Then you have switches that'll disengage or engage your limiter as well as your horn. And then you have your auxiliary in, headphone out. You have your DI with your pre and post EQ button, so you can select what sort of signal you're sending out. And then you've got your power button. On the rear panel, you have your chain out, which is an awesome feature and one of the strongest features, I think, of the MB Combo Amp series. It allows you to plug into extension cabinets and really expand the versatility and overall usability of these combos. We'll talk about that, okay? And then you have your fan that kind of keeps things cool. All right, so starting on the left side of the front panel, you have your input jack, so obviously you plug your instrument into that. And then you have your input attenuator. And that is essentially, if you have a high output bass, this bass tends to be kind of high output, and I'm also kind of playing a little bombastically with some of the slap stuff, so I'm just trying to make sure that there's no clipping happening at the input stages. If you're playing a passive bass or playing fingerstyle, then you probably won't ever need to engage that, but I do have it engaged now just to make sure that everything's clean, as well as that I'm not blowing out my overhead mic. And then you have your preamp gain, and obviously I have that turned down quite a bit just to make sure that my, my speaker doesn't blow out my overhead mics again. Then you have your contour switch, which is a familiar feature for people that use GK rigs. What it allows you to do is introduce a bit of a smiley face EQ. So when you engage that, then at 500 hertz, it drops it down and then bumps the lows and bumps the highs a little bit. So check this out, okay? I'll leave it flat right now, and you kind of got this sound, right? Right, so it kind of scoops it out a little bit. Pretty useful stuff depending on what you're trying to do. Again, it's just versatility for the broad range of tones that people might be going for, okay? I'm gonna leave it disengaged right now because I wanna leave things flat and really give you an idea of what the amp sounds like. Then you have your highs, and this is, by the way, this is the famous GK 4-band active EQ. It's on all of their amps, and it goes all the way back to the 800 RB that started it all. Great sounding, very functional EQ. All right, so here's the highs. All right, so you can get very zingy. Or you can bring it down and you can roll them off, you know. I'm gonna leave it flat right now. Then you have your high mids. All the way up. So if you roll them all the way down, you know, you've got kind of a scooped out sound, right? Flat. All the way up. Which gives it some attitude. Then you have your low mids. You can really thin it out or add some girth all the way down. Then you have your lows, and I'm going to be very conservative with this so that I don't blow out my, my recording. Send it out a lot. I tend to like to leave them pretty flat. Then you have your boost. This is GK's proprietary growl. You know, if I roll it off, then kind of just gives it a little toot and growl, right? If you have it down, you can compensate for, this does kind of affect the volume a little bit, so you can compensate with your master volume. So if I have this down a little bit, check it out. Now check it out. I'm going to bring it up a little bit. I'm going to turn the volume down just a little bit to compensate. Here, it got a little bit louder, but in addition, it got more growly, you know, definitely more aggressive type of tone. And I really dig it. It's something that's sort of a signature of the GK amps. And I usually run my boost knob about halfway up, like 12 o'clock most of the time, okay? But again, your personal preference. You can make it as polite or as impolite as you want. And then you have your master volume knob. And then you have your limiter, engage, and disengage. And this is something that I only use rarely. It's really for extreme settings. If you're cranking this thing up really loud and shaking the walls, and doing some sort of, you know, crazy, bombastic type of playing, it'll just basically protect your speakers and make sure that nothing's going to blow up. But otherwise, if you're doing anything more sane, or if you need that kind of output, by the way, make sure you jump ahead to the MVP part, because that will give you all of that output without, you know, compromising or endangering your speakers, okay? But the limiter is certainly a helpful feature if you needed that, okay? Then you have your horn engage and disengage, and that's something where, you know, this cabinet is a much more versatile sounding cabinet because of the fact that it has that horn. So you can get a great slap tone, which is not something you typically associate with a 115. But with that horn, you can kind of dial in some, you know, some crispness. And then moving on, you have your auxiliary in, and that is a super helpful feature for a combo amp, because if you're using this for practice purposes in your home studio or in your bedroom or something, it allows you to plug in anything with an 1/8" stereo mini plug. So your MP3 player, your phone, your laptop, whatever, you know, you can run your GarageBand or iTunes or whatever into this and play along. Super convenient stuff. And then you have your headphone jack, which allows you to obviously plug in headphones, but then it also disengages the speakers, so it's very useful for practicing into the late hours without bumming out your neighbors. Then you have your great sounding GK DI. And as you can see, I'm using it for the recording of this demo. In addition, there is a pre and post EQ switch, and that's really useful because if you're ever doing anything, maybe some sort of radical EQ on stage and you don't want to send that to the front of house, then you can just send a pre-EQ signal to the front of house and give them something flat to work with, and still have the EQ that you want coming out of your speakers, okay? Otherwise, you can send it post EQ if you want them to have those settings. Pretty useful stuff and very flexible. And then you have the power knob, which seems very straightforward, but the GK power buttons also have a really cool feature. When you first engage it, it'll be red at power up, and then when it turns blue, then you're good to go. If you're getting dirty power or something, then that red, the ring around that power button will turn red, and that'll let you know something's up, and it'll turn blue when everything's resolved, okay? Then on the rear panel, you have what I consider one of the coolest features of the GK MB combo amps, and that is the chain out. What that allows you to do is, using a standard mic cable, you can plug into any of the series of MBP powered enclosures from GK, and it'll send your EQ and volume settings from this main amp to that separate powered amp. Now check it out. This GK MB115 has a 200 watt amp that's dedicated exclusively to the 15 and the horn that's in this box, right? That's not the case with most combo amps, by the way, where you can plug into an external speaker, because in those situations, you're not ever realizing the full power of this head, of the head in the combo amp, that is, until you plug in that extension cabinet, having to do with the impedance and all that, right? Because you need to plug into the extension cabinet to drop down the impedance to whatever is the maximum rated. In this case here, the full 200 watts is always allocated to the 15 and the horn. And when you plug that external MBP cabinet, whether it's the 112 MBP or the 115, it goes all the way up to a 410 MBP. You can potentially plug this in and have a separate 500 watts into a 410 cabinet in that other box. The ramifications of that are pretty awesome, because if the 115 is really all you need for most of your stuff, you don't need to lug around that big old rig, do you? You can just take this and leave this in your bedroom or whatever, and then when you go to do the big gig or the big outdoor thing, then you can plug into a separate, another 115 MBP. That would essentially make this a 400 watt 215 rig, right? So I think that's just a really awesome feature. In the old days, you either had a little dinky combo amp that didn't really do it, but except for practicing, or you had some massive combo amp where it's like it loses all the value of being a combo amp because it's so big and bulky, but that's what it took to have something that had enough power. In the case of the GK series now, with these MBs, it's awesome because you could just pick whatever MB combo amp is going to be best for most of your situations, and then always run out of the chain out to whatever MBP powered enclosure you need for those other things. It's super, super convenient. And there's a separate video clip for the MBP, so go check that out if you want to. But it bears mentioning here because you may think, well, the 115 is not going to really do it for what I need. Well, will it do it for most of what you need? If that's the case, why lug around all the other stuff? At 38 pounds, the MB115 is extremely portable, but expandable as well. Great GK tone, features, portability, value. I always encourage people not to just take my word for it, though. Please go to a GK dealer and check it out on your own. I think you'll agree. You can also go to Gallien.com for further information. But this is the Gallien-Krueger MB115 combo. Check it out. God bless you. I'm Norm Stockton. I hope to see you on the road.